So I want you to put your nose in the glass.
Okay.
Keep your mouth open, but breathe through your nose.
It's completely different.
It's completely different. Okay, ready? Look at you go. Look at you. This is amazing. See, look at the new skill you've learned. You just get like lemon skin, little bit of marmalade, apricot, yellow apple skin, touches of woodiness, but and then you get these like small touches of.
I'm like fascinated by watching you right now. It's like watching an artist do something. Like I'm like, she's like, I can smell this. I'm like, it smells like. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Laura Show. I must admit, when I first thought about having a podcast and a show, and we were changing around the set to have a couch and some tables and a rug, what I really thought was kicking my feet back up and having a glass of wine and just having great conversations with girlfriends, which is what I do at home anyway. Mm-hmm. And so Renee Sferrazza.
It's very good.
Is that right?
That's right.
You have the best name in the whole world.
Thank you very much.
We were actually talking about it off camera, Alex and I, before, and we're like, what a fantastic name.
I agree with you. I do have the best name.
Yes. Okay. Well, you've heard it from me. I'm sure you've heard it from a lot of people. But I wanted to bring you on because you're a sommelier. Mm-hmm. You are a TV wine personality. Mm-hmm. You are a wine writer. What else do you do? You own Wine by Renee, founder of Wine by Renee.
Yeah.
Content creator. You talk about wine, live, eat, breathe, sleep wine.
Exactly. The short form of everything is that I talk about wine for a living. That's my job.
You talk about, that's the best job now
It's really
in the world.
not. It's not too bad at all, I have to say. But I'm a certified sommelier. So basically, if you've watched the movie Somm, which is about like people going into their master sommelier certification, I'm not a master sommelier.
Okay.
I'm like before that.
Okay.
So,
are we working toward the master out of curiosity?
No, I'm not working toward the master sommelier.
That's some next level shit.
I just, well, picture it this way. So it's like doing an entire bachelor's degree in one test.
Oh.
And then there's an advanced sommelier, which is like an entire master's degree in one test. And then there's the master sommelier, which is like a PhD, but in like one test.
Okay.
So some people don't do a master's or a PhD and have wonderful careers with
right,
their
of
bachelors.
course, yes.
And I've been able to do the same.
Well, that's fantastic. I think maybe we should even first and foremost start with what is a sommelier? Like, explain it to the people, because even when you came in today, I was like, I don't really know. I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, so a sommelier is basically someone who is an expert on basically all beverages, so not just wine. I tend to talk about wine mostly because that is a very large category of beverages, but I also focus on non-alcoholic products, beers, spirits. There's also tea and coffee included in that as well. The learning is really quite broad. Oh, and sake, that's another one too that's included. Yeah. So the learning is really quite broad across all beverages, and the idea is that you basically have knowledge from how it's made to where it was made, how that interacts with its sense of self, its terroir, as people say, that thing around its environment that creates an object to be what it is, and then how that plays in terms of the real world of people enjoying them.
Beverages?
For all beverages.
That's a lot of information
to
try to keep in the brain.
It is.
That's fantastic.
But you do real estate, and I know nothing about real estate.
Well, okay, that's fair. But I mean, there's condos and houses, and you're right. When you're in it, you don't recognize it.
I don't do anything towards the industry of wine, so I'm not being part of the industry in the way where I'm doing like industry conversations, people learning about how a specific region is focusing for internal use, which would basically be other sommeliers taking that information and using it in restaurants.
Okay.
Everything that I do is consumer facing, so that people who love wine can learn more about why they like it, or might try something new based on similarities as they start to learn about their palate. And a big part of that is something that I call academic drinking, which is why I brought the wine.
That was the greatest thing. Did you coin this term, academic drinking? Well, that just gives everybody the ability to drink and feel not like
exactly
a schlep.
It's becoming more intentional with your drinking, which is why I call it academic drinking, because you can drink anything. Anything can happen.
I guess that's true. Well, did you want to start then by letting us know what we're having here?
So the wine that I brought with me is actually a back vintage. It's a 2018. It's by Trail Estate in Prince Edward County. So it's homegrown in Toronto, where we both are. And this is their Vintage 3 Unfiltered Chardonnay. They're at Vintage 5 right now. The winemaker is a great woman. Her name is Mackenzie. And Trail Estate in Prince Edward County is really well known for doing like unfiltered, slight skin contact, funky stuff.
Okay.
And I have had this in my cellar for some time. And when we were talking about what wine I was going to bring, you said that you liked white wine.
I did.
And I decided to bring you a white wine that has a lot of components to it that kind of bridge the gap between red and white.
Okay.
So for academic drinking, the first thing that you want to do is, I would say, if this is a white card on the other side, if you hold it over it, you'll see what color it is. You can do it on any other color, but you won't really see the color unless it's on white. And you can see this is a Chardonnay, but what Chardonnay have you had that's this golden-y tone? You can even see when you swirl it up, so everyone at home can check it out too.
See, you got a good swirl. I don't even know how to do this.
If you don't know how to do a swirl, you just put your glass down and draw a circle.
Okay, we're gonna do that here. There we
you
go.
go. But you can see it's quite goldeny, and it's aged. It's from 2018, like I said, but this is a lot more goldeny, and I'll explain like why it's golden. But it's always good to look at the color of your wine, even if you're not a sommelier. Every time you go, and that's step one of academic drinking. So every time you have a sip of something, check out the color of it. You'll start to notice more things.
And like, I mean, it obviously it sounds silly because you're thinking like white wine, it's going to be white, but it's obviously they have different shades of.
Exactly.
It's really more yellow, like some shade of yellow, and I know in red wines there's probably
like purples to rubies and stuff like that, and it tells you a lot. And you can get more intentional with looking at exactly what you're drinking.
Okay, so
we're starting with step one is to look at it. Step two is to look at something called the tears. If you swirl, you'll see like there's little tears falling down the side of the glass.
Yeah.
So this is going to tell you how much alcohol and sugar is in wine.
Okay, so the more it tears,
so
the more...
the thicker the tears and the slower they fall, the higher the alcohol, the higher the sugar.
Okay, so I really would have to compare this to others to know.
Yeah, so for example, with this one, we have them falling pretty fast. The tears have some definition, but they kind of fall flat. So we're looking at about like 13.5% alcohol to 12. So we're at 12.7% alcohol for this bottle.
Okay, what's normal?
Normal doesn't...
I just buy wine and drink it.
Normal is usually like, this would technically be like a medium level of alcohol, 12.7.
Gotcha.
Okay, so now we're going to get into smelling. We've been swirling. Swirling is the next step. There you go. You're doing great.
No, we're going back here, folks.
You're doing great. You're doing great. So I want you to put your nose in the glass.
Okay.
Keep your mouth open, but breathe through your nose. It's going to feel really weird, but try to breathe. But you see, there you go. You noticed already what is happening. You want to tell everybody?
Yeah, it's kind of like you taste it on your throat a little bit.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. If I got that wrong.
Exactly. So
stop the taping.
So half of smelling is actually, what you're doing is you're using your retronasal senses, which like sit right at the back of your palate. So you know when you go out for like a really good meal with friends and you remember exactly how everything tastes because you were talking and having a good time? That's when your retronasal senses usually get used without you knowing that.
Oh, okay.
So you can fool your body into smelling and tasting things better by enacting them. So when you put your nose in the glass and smell with your mouth closed and then open.
It's completely different.
It's completely different. With your mouth closed.
Wow.
It kind of smells like a general white wine with citrus notes.
Yes.
Right? But with your mouth open, you get like apricot and stone fruits and star fruits in there. You get this nuance that's coming in. It's almost like an earthy feel and this wooded tone that's coming into it as well.
It's funny. I was talking beforehand with the team and with my husband. Actually, I was like, I'm going to be, doing this episode with you. And so like on the weekend, I was trying wine. I'm like smelling it, I'm like, what do you smell or taste? And he starts labeling off all these things, and I'm like, it smells like wine to me. Like, I don't know if some people are just more like tuned in to.
I don't have a great nose. I don't really have a great nose at all. When I was in my 20s and I was starting to do my sommelier certification, I was also smoking, which is not really great for smelling.
Yes.
But you don't have to have a great nose. The main thing about smelling wine is if you smell wine with your mouth open, you will smell more, as you just experienced.
Yeah, that's incredible.
The second thing is your husband's probably really good at remembering smells.
Yes.
So, like, if he's the kind of person...
It's like green apple. And, like, not even apple. It's a green apple.
Yeah.
You're going to be that specific? And I was like, I don't know. I said something, and he was like, no.
But he'd be the kind of person that's like, oh, wow, I really liked that place. They have, like, a nice scent to it or something. Will he comment on scents?
Well, and he's really good at, like, thinking about foods. Like, he'll make up recipes in his mind. Like, he'll just know what would go well together. I don't really have that. So particularly thought this was interesting today.
So his sense memory is really strong.
Yes.
You can make your sense memory stronger.
By opening my mouth.
By opening your mouth, but also like there's one specific note in here. Yellow apple skin. You ever make an apple pie and you take the skin off the apples?
Yes.
Do you remember what they smell like?
I never make apple pie, let's be honest,
Okay.
but I have taken the skin off apples before.
What
Yes.
do you remember what they smell like? They're kind of a little bit earthy, and it's not full apple. It's almost like twiggy apple.
Oh, okay.
It's not like so it's remembering what those things smell like. And you can literally cut more things and smell more things and pick up food at the grocery store, interact with it more, create memories on it. So that's part of it. That's like the next level of academic drinking. The step 2 is mainly just smelling with your mouth open. You will smell more.
Got you. There's not actually like apple in the wine.
No,
making
it's entirely made with grapes.
All
of this is
all made with grapes. So this literally all comes from like the ground.
So this is something called terroir, which we'll get into after the 3rd step of academic drinking.
Sorry, I'm messing up with the steps here. I can't. I'm just so excited to drink. Where's that the next
so
step?
now we're going to sip, but I don't want you to just make it go down the hatch. I want you to make sure you coat your entire palate, every taste bud, and the sides of your mouth.
Okay.
Okay, ready? You can chew your wine, make sure it coats it. When you swallow, first thing you're going to notice in this way is how much you're salivating. Salivating a lot.
A lot.
Which means that the wine has a high acidity.
Okay.
If you eat lemon or sour things, you usually salivate more.
Okay. Yes, that would make sense. Yes.
There's also a pull and a stickiness to it, which is like tannins, the things that make your mouth feel dry. Those are coming right at the front of your tongue and a little bit underneath here.
Which you don't normally get in a white wine.
You don't, but they have skin contact on this and barrel aging. So we have a little bit of tannin, which means that you're getting a little bit of stick. The other thing is you're getting a nice long finish, which is showing its level of quality. You don't get as many flavors on the palate as you do on the nose. Most wines don't have a lot of flavor on their palates.
That's true.
But
That's
you
a
do
good
have
point.
these like remnants and expressions of the structure of wine.
Okay.
And that's academic drinking.
So, look, for me, like I'm one of these people, and I wanted to bring you in because I find, like I'll go to a restaurant nowadays, like people don't just assume that it's the husband that's gonna pick from the wine menu. Like everyone gets a chance to choose whatever wine we're drinking. And so sometimes my husband will say like, well, why don't you give it a try? And I'm like, and I'm like a deer in headlights at a restaurant. I have no idea. The book is big. It's overwhelming. It feels intimidating. I don't know. Should I just get something cheap because who cares? Or do I go expensive because there really is a difference? Like I'm just very much novice in that sense. I like the act of drinking and I like drinking and eating, but I really don't know a lot about it. And I thought, there's some snobbery around wine drinking.
There is. The main thing about the snobbery around it is that whenever we eat or drink something, we don't have this big discussion about why it tastes the way that it tastes or why it is the way that it is. The reason why I call this academic drinking is because it is more intentional drinking, but it also helps you understand your own personal palate. Before I came for today, I asked you what you like to drink because if I know what you like to drink, I'll bring you something that you'll like.
Right.
But at the same time, if you can understand what you like, it helps determine what you can choose.
Right. That at least already gives you a short list.
It gives you a short list because you know what you like. And a lot of times with wine, people have trouble getting over the what do I like question. So if you're more intentional about what you're drinking, you're trying things and you're open to, I might not like this, but I might like it. Remember why you didn't like it or why you did like it.
Yeah.
That's the main difference.
Okay.
And then when it comes...
So you must take notes, right? Like when you're tasting wine. Like I imagine
now I don't anymore. I just keep it up.
Oh, wow.
I just keep it up and remember. But I used to take a lot more notes.
Yes, I would imagine so.
I did. But when it comes to a wine list, you like crisp white wines. I'm sure you've had a lot of stuff from France, like Sancerre and Chablis.
Love both of those,
Great.
actually. Yes.
You've had some interesting New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs.
Yes.
Maybe some that are not as quaffable or a bit more barrel aged. You might like more.
Okay.
You've probably had Chenin Blanc from South Africa.
Yes.
There you go. You probably had Riesling, dry Riesling, and enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
So you have like this wide range of things that you can choose from.
Well, and this is interesting. It's not that I dislike red wine. I actually quite like red wine, but I find It keeps me up at night. I don't know. Is that a thing that I've made up in my head? Do you know anything about like some health?
It depends. So if it keeps you up at night, it was one of two things that are happening. So the first question would be, what is the price of the red wine you're normally enjoying?
Probably not very expensive.
Okay.
We keep it cheap in my house.
That's okay. So red wine takes more time to make than white wine for one very specific reason: barrel aging. Barrel aging takes time. Just because it physically takes time. Like a kid is only going to be 2 years old for the time that it's 2 years old. When it's 4, it's 4. And they don't go to kindergarten before they're 4 because they're not ready yet. There's not time. So the same thing with red wine. It just needs more time. So time costs money.
Got you.
Right?
Yes.
So if you buy a red wine that's cheaper than its time flavor would denote, it would mean that they're using different ways to make that time be fooled by using like oak chips or oak flavoring. So we have this essence of oak without aging in oak.
Okay. And that
which
impacts
can cause
sleep?
headaches and
Headaches?
Add to like other things that might keep you up at night or
I thought it was
adjust your
just
body.
the red wine.
It's not
'cause
just
I'm
red
cheap.
wine.
So what is the price range then that you should at bare minimum like buy this?
Bare
or
minimum
buy
for
high?
red wines for cheap, like there are cheap regions and expensive regions. So like a cheap region would be Chile, Argentina, Portugal. Those ones, I would say for a bare minimum, I would be looking above like $25 a bottle to get like just like a generic good wine. But if you're going into an expensive region for reds, like Italy, France, Spain, I would at bare minimum be shopping at like $35 to $37 a bottle.
Okay, good to know. I'm going to
Yeah.
Spain literally next week.
Well, if you're going to Spain, you'll be spending a lot less money.
Yeah, true. Than
by
here.
the time it
shipping
gets here.
I mean, the flight and everything's expensive.
Yeah,
but yes, on the wine.
You're paying for it with the flight. But all of that back end stuff is covered with that.
Yes.
But it will be, so, and then with white wines, all the white wines I just listed are not barrel aged. They're very fresh. They're pressed. They're done. And they're moved forward. They're bottled. They're on the shelf by like, I want to say 6 months after the vintage has been picked and done. So then you can buy a bottle that's at like $15.
Okay. I was going to ask you, are there wines at the LCBO? Do you shop at?
I do. I go there often.
Okay. At the LCBO that like everyone buys that you're like, these are just, everyone needs to stop buying. Like they're over popular.
You know, the ones, so this is where this sense of terroir comes into play. So terroir is this term in wine, and it's a great term because it's a very humanistic term.
Can I
Wine.
keep drinking?
Yeah, you can keep drinking. You can keep drinking here. We didn't cheers yet. I'll do that. Well, see, there we go. Faux pas. What makes this wine as it is the exact same reason why you are you. If you grew up somewhere else with a different family, would you be the you are right now?
No way.
Exactly.
Of course not, yeah.
So your sense of terroir is the fact that you grew up where you grew up, you had the family that you had the friends that you had, you went to schools that you went to. This has all created your own personal identity outside of the fact that I am Laura, I have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I am such and such amount tall and whatever. So even if you know another language, do you speak another language?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, so when you speak multiple languages, you start to realize you're a different person in different languages.
Oh, okay.
You sound different. You feel a little like a different side of yourself. So that's a window
like
to
a different personality kind of comes out.
Exactly. But we'll use that concept again in a minute. So terroir is sense of place. This wine is this wine because it was made in the place that it was made. All of the environmental figures around it have created it to be what it is. So wines that lack a sense of terroir lack this sense of deepness and intensity and authenticity to them. There are wines on LCBO shelves that are arguably delicious for people, but have a lack of authenticity.
Okay. Are we allowed to say them?
One that comes to mind consistently for me is like Cupcake. I find it lacks authenticity despite the fact that it is a Californian wine. But it kind of takes this generic sense of place and this generic thing. It's like saying, Americans are really great for like hot dogs and patriotism. Right. And, that's not necessarily true.
Right.
So if we take it and we boil down Californian Chardonnay into this big sweet bomb of a thing, then what is Californian Chardonnay and its authenticity of it, right?
Okay.
And then you have these different places where these large grapes can go. So we're drinking a Chardonnay, but it doesn't taste like a Californian Chardonnay.
No, it doesn't.
So this was where that aspect of speaking a different language would come into play. It acts differently in every different place. So experiencing place and that sense of self and that sense of terroir is what provides authenticity and often costs more money.
Okay, so we got to spend a little more money. But
It's worth it.
$15, that's not bad.
$15 is a starting range. Like you
Okay.
can get like really great stuff for white wine between like $15 to $27. It's like a nice sweet spot. You go above that, you get into like the $30, $35 range, you're going into fancier winemaking. Above $35 for whites, you're getting into specific regional pricing. And then above $55, you're getting into like fancy stuff that's like, I bought these shoes, but they costed more than your sneakers because my sneakers are designer and yours are not.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Yes. I was in Bordeaux last year.
Yeah.
And I went on a little wine tour, and it was during their Futures.
Oh, their Futures?
So a lot of places were unfortunately closed because
Yeah.
the Futures people.
Futures is like the stock market when you buy options.
Yes.
Yes,
I
but
learned
for
so
wine.
much. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. And of course these were before the wine was oaked. So people had to guess
Yeah.
what they thought in 4, 6, whatever how many years it
Yep.
would taste like. And it's way more sophisticated than I had
Yeah.
thought.
So that's where the snobbery kind of comes into
Yeah, I
it.
get
where
it.
It's like, well, there's so many choices to make and so many things to think about that once you start enacting them in your life, it doesn't seem as snobbish. And I always try within my work to make it less snobby because at the end of the day, you can buy a bottle of wine for $8.95 at the LCBO.
Fusion.
Exactly. How much you will like that is entirely up to your own personal sense of
Yes,
self.
yes.
But it will get you drunk and you will have a great time
Right.
doing that.
It does the job
It does
sometimes.
the job. So there's no sense in being really snobby about it, but you can put this intentionality into things. And intentionality does sometimes come off as very snobby.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're trying to take the snobbery out of it a little bit.
Exactly.
I mean, this is the most beautiful glass, obnoxious slightly.
Exactly.
Tell me, like, does the glass matter? I'm sure it does because
The
that's why they have
glasses
it.
do matter. So this is a Riedel glass. It's a hand blown glass, and they're from their Wings release. So the reason why I brought this one is because Chardonnay is actually so grapes are kind of, for sommeliers, are sectioned into these different like kind of categories across the board. So you have very aromatic varietals, which again, they're Sauvignon Blanc and Riesling are one of them. You can smell them from here. Like as you were talking, if the glass was near you, you would smell it. That's a very aromatic varietal. You also have like very structure-driven varietals as well. Chardonnay falls into this category of neutral grape varietals like Pinot Grigio. So it has a lot to do with like the winemaking. So what you want to do with the Chardonnay, and this is a specifically Chardonnay glass, is they have this little bowl here, which they call the Wings, because it kind of looks like a wing to them. And this is trapping in its aromatics. So when you go into the glass, you're smelling more of that wine. But once your nose is out of the glass, you're actually not smelling it as
at
much
all.
because it's kind of trapping it in.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So the glass does matter. The lighter the glass is usually the better.
Right, and those are the ones I break all the time.
I would say, well, in my
The
house,
big ass stems, like this
Yeah.
is asking for trouble at a dinner party. You don't serve these at your house at dinner.
well, I use these for myself.
Yeah, okay.
But
Because you trust yourself, not your friends.
Yeah, and I have more expensive glasses at home that like I only use, and even my partner's like, I've washed them with water and placed them next to the counter for you to clean.
Yes.
She won't touch them.
Yes.
But the stem is also important. So your body is going to start to heat up this wine. And if we want a Chardonnay to be around the same temperature that it was, how far your hand can be from the glass is also really important.
Oh.
So you can comfortably hold this if you have like a large hand size. Like your hand is smaller than mine. And you can see like you're only taking up about half of that stem.
Right.
I am like taking up more like
Right.
75%. If your hand was bigger, you would be taking up
The full. And then the
full.
heat from your hand would heat.
it up over
And we
time.
don't want that,
We don't
particularly
want that.
with
exactly.
white wine.
Exactly.
So red wine, are you allowed to hold a red wine glass by the here?
Ideally, if a glass has a stem or a wine is served in a stemmed glass, you would always want to hold it by the stem
Got
because
it.
think about it this way, like you never want to warm it up more than you would need. And this is a very sommelier way to hold a glass, as you see me doing.
Yes.
Where you don't even hold it by the
Not
stem
even,
at all.
You don't
just
drink it like that, though.
You can.
Oh my goodness. That's too funny. I always thought white, so obviously I misunderstood.
Yeah.
White that you held by the stem and red it was okay because you wanted your hand to warm it.
It
But clearly
depends. So it depends on what temperature the wine started at, how warm the room is, how much you yourself are warm.
Got it, right?
Everybody has their tropical moments from time
Yes,
to time.
okay.
And you just feel warmer and you feel like you might be kind of enacting that heat on everything around you. And like when you finish going for a run or being outside or walking very vigorously, or maybe you're just having a moment where you just feel really warm. You can warm up the glass of wine by about a degree of Celsius by about an hour, like every hour that you have it, it'll warm up by a degree of Celsius. So if you're serving red wine at like a really great temperature, which would be like 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, which is like basically room temperature, you would want to start it at a lower temperature, which would probably be around 16 to 18 degrees. So basically, if you are a slow drinker and you're drinking slowly, and remember, glass is not metal.
Right.
It's not holding the heat. It's basically distributing the heat and going away.
Okay.
Right? So you would be warming up your glass and your wine consistently.
Got it.
for
Luckily,
however
I
long
drink
you have
mine
it.
pretty quickly.
See, there you go. So you're fine.
It's okay.
So you're good. But you should always like hold it not on the
Okay.
bowl.
No, that's noted. No, so the modern glasses where there is no stem because you don't want to break any glasses at the dinner table is really just for that.
That's just for that.
Yeah.
That's just for that.
There's nothing good there. Okay. Do you know the Apple show called Drops of Blood or Drops of God?
Drops from God.
Drops
of
from God. Have
or
you
Drops
seen
of
that?
God. I've seen it. It's basically the concept's really interesting. World famous somm has like massive cellar, leaves to daughter or like the person that he wants to pass protege.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've watched it all.
How is it?
Well, I loved it, but I was curious if you had watched it, if it. Do people really have that kind of education about wine where they could smell wine and they could tell you the exact year that it came from?
Yeah, there's certain signs. So like we could take this wine again from Trail Estate. So I know that the winery did. I could tell from the color alone that there's skin contact on this because I know the vintage is 2018. If I didn't know the vintage was 2018, I would probably guess that it was a lot older than it was by the color. But from the nose, it doesn't have like the signs of aging. So that I'll kind of put this together. You start by looking at it and you can see, okay, the alcohol is not really heavy. You're trying to figure out what the grape is. This is sitting between like 12 to 13%. What grapes? You're already starting to like collect clues over time. It is like an ambery color, but this can mean anything. The fact that it's leading into orange would show that skin contact is there. Skin contact would be that for white wine, it's like processing like a red wine. It's spending time like interacting with the skins because except for a couple of grape varietals on the red side of things, the flesh inside the grape is clear.
Yes.
And then it's the skins that provide the color.
And is that where the tannins come from too?
It is where the tannins come from. And then for white wines, it's from barrel aging, which is where the tannins come from. But the change of color is oxygen.
Okay.
That provides like additional color changing.
Okay.
There's certain grapes that do really, really react to oxygen, like Tempranillo and Rioja. They tend to age like a little faster, it's at least by look, because they're very oxygenative, like they're very reactive to oxygen. But okay, so I'm looking at this. It doesn't look like, it looks like it has some skin contact on it because for it to be this color, it would have to be at least 15 years old.
Oh, okay.
So, and now I'm like, okay, well, I have two choices. It's either smells like a 15-year-old wine or it smells like a newer vintage and it's not 15 years old. So as you go into the nose, you know, there's not a great development of tertiary characteristics like mushroom and earthiness. There is also like not this great sense of clarity that you usually get with a well-aged wine. You just get like lemon skin, little bit of marmalade, apricot, yellow apple skin, touches of woodiness, but nothing that's like, it's well integrated, so it's neutral oak. And then you get these like small touches of like minerality and brightness in there. So it's not.
I'm like fascinated by watching you right now. It's like watching an artist do something. Like I'm like, she's like, I can smell this. I'm like, it smells like white wine.
This is my job. This is my job.
That's amazing to see.
So right now it's already telling me, I'm like, okay, this must be a youthful vintage because or at least something. So now 2018, if we count backwards, 2024, right? This vintage is yet to happen, so it's not this year. So it would be 2013, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018. 6 years old.
Okay.
So it's like mid-range. It's
Okay.
entering into tertiary characteristics. Because I could call out more notes if it was younger. So it's kind of like filtering down. Like as you get older, you're better at what you do, right?
Okay, I understand now because I think like someone just looks at and tastes the wine, they're like, oh, that's the whatever. But I didn't realize like it's kind of all these clues along the way, like a roadmap that leads you back to it. Okay, that's so interesting.
So then I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, what is giving me the clues that what grape could it be? Apple notes for me always scream Chardonnay. And then the fact that I have oak on it also tells me it's Chardonnay because Chardonnay is usually oaked. What's usually oaked, right? And then I taste it. The acidity is really bright. It doesn't have a lot of like round characteristic to it, which means it's coming from a cooler climate than a warmer climate. Whereas cool climate Chardonnay made. So now I have Canada, BC, France. It could be from New Zealand as well. Some regions in Australia and some regions in Chile. That's it. Which one of those do I think it is?
Wow, that's incredible.
That's it.
Are you like the most fun person to have at a party? Like, do people test you? Do people test you? Or are they like, try it. What is this? Or is it stressful for your friends because they're like, oh, she's not
I usually mitigate this because I just have people over my house and I have all the wine anyway. So I just this is what we're serving.
Oh, that's so
Enjoy.
funny. Yes.
But I tend to be fun at parties.
Okay. A little bit about you. Well, first and foremost, actually, I had a question before I got here today. Trends around wine. Apparently there's something going on the TikToks of the world. Where people are putting wine in blenders.
Yeah.
Do we know about this?
Yeah. So
what's your thoughts?
The concept is, so when I tell you to like swirl your wine like this, what you're doing is you're adding air to it. Adding air to it opens
Look at
it up.
me now,
Look at
guys.
You now. Look at you go. Look at you. This is amazing. See, look at the new skill you've learned. So just the general concept with air and wine. Imagine you've been on like a super long car ride, okay? Like you're driving to go see family 5 hours away. What's the first thing you do when you get out of the car? The very first thing.
You stretch.
Exactly.
Right.
This wine has been in this bottle since 2018. Do you know what you need to stretch? New air, new fresh air. It needs to open up.
Right.
A lot more. And when you smelled it the first time versus now, it's opened
up.
It has. So wine smells and tastes better when it's opened with oxygen. That's the general baseline comment. People are blending cheaper wines to add more oxygen into them faster to make them better.
So the same thing though would be to open up a bottle of wine, let it sit, or to open up a bottle of wine and decant it. Okay.
Same thing.
So it's
the same concept, but if you do it on cheaper wines with more air, the idea is that you would basically do it faster and make that cheaper wine taste better.
And your thoughts? Is that accurate?
I don't really blend any of my wine.
Like I wouldn't ever do that to any wine.
Most wines, most youthful wines. So like just as a general statistic, like 90% of the wine purchased is drunk within 45 minutes. Most of the wines made to be drunk within 45 minutes, all they really need is a good swirl. If you would like to get a better sense of that wine, you can decant it. You can put it through a blender if you would like. It will, the main reason why I think people are very fascinated by this is because of the snobbery of wine. Because wine seems like
this seems a lot more snobby than just putting it on.
Exactly. The ivory tower of wine makes it seem like you're in this place where you have to be acting proper all the time to get the same result. You don't have to. If you want to blend it and add more air into it, thank you for adding air into your wine. It needed it. And if people are interacting more with wine because of that, that just makes me happy because they're being more intentional about what they're drinking, which means they're thinking about it more, which means maybe they bought an $8.95 bottle, but maybe they might be more curious to purchase something a little bit outside of that price range, or grow their palate by thinking more about the time. The more time you spend doing something, the more time you think about what you're doing.
Okay, one more thing about the snobbery. One of the things in that show that I had mentioned was one of the characters had to pretend that they were a waitress bringing someone wine to the table.
A sommelier?
I guess it was a sommelier. Yeah, you're right, because that's
A sommelier?
Okay, and is it sommelier?
Sommelier.
Sommelier.
It's like Frenchy.
I'll leave it to you.
It's very Frenchy.
Somm sounds good.
Somm's fine.
And the way that, now that I've learned, I never knew this whole song and dance at restaurants was going on. And I didn't realize the bottle should always be facing you.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about, like, obviously,
so that is a big part of the sommelier certification. So there's 2 certifications in wine that kind of separate it apart. Both of them have this like knowledge backing to them, where you're learning about all the things that can help you identify what a wine is, but their key difference is in service. There's the sommelier certification and then the WSET certification, which is the wine and spirit trust, and it's more on like the importing, marketing, and sales side of understanding wine. The sommelier side of things is service, customers, restaurant. So service is a big portion to this particular side of wine. And when I was doing my service exam, you could tell the people that just enjoyed wine and never worked in a restaurant before, versus the people that heavily worked in a restaurant.
I've never worked in a restaurant, so I don't get this.
Yeah, so it seems really intimidating if you have never worked in a restaurant. But if you've worked in a restaurant, it seems a lot less intimidating, because it's just a specific, like, you always have to go around the table, like counterclockwise. And then you also have to serve people in a very specific order. It used to be serve all the women first, and then whoever, it would be like the special guest, then women, then men, with the host tasting the bottle first, whoever ordered it. Yeah. Now it's not really that anymore. Now they've changed it, which is great. They need to keep up with the times.
Yes.
And now it's
a little old fashioned.
Yeah. Now it's still like special guest is served first. So if it's like a birthday or an anniversary or something that you're like, we're celebrating this person graduating, all of these things are gender neutral. They would still get served first.
Okay.
And then you would basically go around to everybody else, and then the person who tried the wine last. So that's technically the host. You serve in a very specific way. Everything has to be a specific level of cold. If they're decanting a red, it has to be done in a very specific way as well. They come with like the little cart, the Guéridon cart.
Oh, yes.
There's like a candle so that they can see the sediment as they decant the bottle. It's like a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
And like thank God for twist tops now, because like the whole I guess the bottle's supposed to face the host. So you're not supposed to turn the bottle, right?
Well, if I was serving this in a restaurant, I would like present it to you like this, be like, this is what the bottle is. You can open, like the whole point even with a bottle opener is as you would open it, you would turn the bottle opener, not the bottle.
But I'm like, well,
that's fine. You're doing it at home, but it's actually quite easy. It goes on the table. Yeah. It sits itself on the table. It's facing these people. The cork goes in, and you just turn the cork. Like could do both. It's faster, but you could just turn the cork. Yes. It's fine. But even with this, your hand is turning, not the bottle. So like even if you were cracking it open, you wouldn't go like this. You would just like twist it. Okay. And then if I were to pour you, I would make sure it was facing you.
Oh, I would
like
do
this.
Okay.
But since the audience is this way, we would be facing this way so that you could see what it was that I was pouring.
That is so next level.
Exactly. So that's how...
It's very fancy. And I went to a restaurant after seeing this, and then the gentleman was doing it. I've never paid much attention to the waiter before. And now I feel so bad because I'm like, I even said to the guy, I was like, fantastic job, like as if I knew anything. But like there's so much that goes into it. How did you get into this industry? I'm curious how a person, I feel like there's not a lot of women in it, but correct me if I'm wrong. I hope that's changing.
There's a lot more women now. Like there's the thing about wine is really interesting because it's changing a lot. It's incredibly Eurocentric in a lot of aspects of it. So we see a lot more change coming, especially around communities of difference that are not part of that Eurocentric view. So a lot more people of color, a lot more people outside of that old world mentality, a lot more women coming into it as well. A lot of people are just realizing that there is not real, the snobbery in wine is a perceived thing that doesn't affect you if you just enjoy wine. Because this, at the end of the day, this wonderful liquid has no gender.
I love you.
It has no gender. It has no preconceived notion. It is not
It
just
doesn't
for
know
rich
you.
people. It's not classist. It is not colorist. It is nothing. We as humans have placed all of that onto wine. But the wine in the glass has done absolutely nothing. And a lot of people are realizing that the wine has done nothing. Why am I not drinking it if I like it? Why am I holding myself back from enjoying something?
Right.
Because the wine didn't do anything whatsoever. Now, you see a lot more women coming into it, but you also see it from a top-down thing. So a couple of years ago, the wine industry had a massive change. There was a couple of sexual harassment scandals within the Me Too era as well, which also affected the wine industry in a very, very big way. It's one of the reasons why I will not be continuing with the master sommelier thing, and I'll move into something else. But you know, you have more women at the top, you have more people of color coming in, and you have more people talking about wine in the way that it works for them. So the industry is changing because more people are coming into it and realizing that, you know, there we go. It's just wine.
Right. And one, I guess the fact that even places like, I mean, Canada has never really been known as a wine place, but, you know, now here we go.
You know, we're really
There's some
trying.
great wines here.
There are some amazing wines here. So that's why I brought a Canadian wine today.
Yeah.
I always try to bring more Canadian wines. We have grapes that we're really well known for. And, you know, when we're looking at where Canada fits and where people fit into the world of wine, it's also about how people fit into everything. So for me, when I started getting into wine, I actually didn't get into wine because of an aha bottle. A lot of people have like aha moment bottles. Like a very good friend of mine who used to work in marketing now works in wine. And she's like, oh, I went out with this client and they knew a lot about wine. And they showed me this amazing Barolo, and then I was hooked. I didn't have any of that.
Right. Okay.
No, I've always been an entrepreneur, so I've worked for myself for a very long time. My first company was actually in custom light fixtures, so like custom light artwork for restaurants around Toronto. Didn't really fly, but there's still a couple of the light fixtures around. But
That's interesting.
I know, right? But I was working at a restaurant at the time, and I wanted more shifts. I'm about like 24 at the time, and they told me I had to learn the wine list. I had a degree from York University on environmental policy that I had no way of using because Stephen Harper really hated the environment, as we all look back on his, you know, legacy of things. So I exited university with basically a useless degree, trying to figure out how to use it, and then realizing that once I started learning about wine, it's a really great agricultural resource, and I could use all the things that I liked about my degree in it. And it also is kind of an umbrella for everything that I wanted to do. There's an academic side to wine. There is all this pomp and circumstance that kind of comes with it, which is basically just being extra. And that's really fun.
Who doesn't want to be a little extra every now and then?
A little extra. Yeah. And then you can also own your own business within it and kind of work within it in your own way. And I really liked all the aspects of wine. I thought that was really fascinating. So I kind of just marched forward on that.
Do you have a like high tolerance for alcohol? Because, are we spitting in buckets most of the time? I imagine you have to try a lot of wine.
Yeah, so it depends on what I'm doing. So if I'm out with friends, usually I'll be up to the hours hanging out with them. But those are friend moments. Yes. But not only am I like talking about wine on TV and writing about it and tasting it and giving my own reviews, I also do wine judging. So wine judging is very intense, and there is no way that you could make it through a full judging session without spitting. So like on the large end of judging, you could be tasting like up to 200 wines per day.
You would even get drunk just from the little bit.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So spitting this, it's very true. And even when you go to like wine trade shows, I've already been to 5 this month. You basically walk around table, people taste wine, and you like spit it out. Because there's also like thousands of wines to try. And then even when it's a low judging day is still 40 wines.
Wow.
Even if you drink an ounce of each wine, there's 25 ounces in a bottle of wine. You're basically drinking 2 full bottles of wine, even if you only drink an ounce of each.
Okay.
An ounce is very small.
Yeah.
An ounce is one
It's
shot.
like shot, yeah.
It's one shot. And most people actually drink more than an ounce. So you can still do the concepts of academic drinking, and spitting really, if you do it right, it will feel like you had a full sip, but not feel like you had a full sip.
I just can't imagine spitting it.
You haven't had to be in a scenario where you have to drink a lot of wine.
Right.
Then
you would have to.
Then you would have to.
Okay.
Every person in wine, when they first start in it, goes to a trade show, doesn't spit anything, and realizes that they are gonna have a bad day.
Yeah, makes an ass of
day.
themselves, all the things.
And then someone tells you that you did something stupid. You're there that's the business side of that world. You're not there to be the drunk person.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought you were gonna be like, well, I'm Italian, right?
I am. But
like I grew up drinking wine. I thought it was gonna be part of your like backstory. I didn't know lighting. I worked at a lighting place.
No, my parents don't. My parents joke all the time. Neither one of them had a wine cellar or collection. People ask them, because my parents come to like a lot of the events that I do, and they'll specifically like, oh, how did Renee get into wine? And they'll be like, we have no idea.
Right. We didn't enforce this on her at 10.
We don't know. We don't have a cellar. We didn't have any collections of things. Nothing.
Do you mind me asking about your collection? I imagine you have a collection.
Yeah, there's about like 700 bottles at home.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't keep a single bottle.
I
buy it, I drink it.
The key is the more you have, the easier it is to keep.
Right. Yes. Okay. I got it. Okay. And what's like you specifically? What kind of wines do you flock to?
I drink mainly white wines or wines based around acidity. So like red wines that have very bright acidity. So like really great Pinots, Pinot Noirs, Gamay, really great Italian varietals that are based around acidity. So my cellar is kind of broken down into regions, and then aged bottles and sparkling is on its own. So we drink a lot of sparkling in my house. My partner also really loves sparkling.
Okay. And sparkling really is just wine. Like it starts with good wine.
Well, sparkling,
first, I imagine,
sparkling
and
is
then
like
you add bubbles? No.
Sparkling is a massive category that I tend to keep by itself because there's multiple ways to make sparkling wine.
Okay.
But I'll touch on that in a sec. Everything is kind of broken down in the cellar by when I will drink it. So there's bottles that are aging. I usually tend to collect like Brunellos because I really like Brunello. But I also have some Burgundies in there too, and both of them are based on acidity. So those are being collected and aged. I'm not touching those. When I'm aging, that's basically like a quarter of my cellar I will not be touching for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Wow.
Exactly. But that's only a quarter of 700.
Those poor bottles. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to do. But
it's an RSP.
I feel bad for them.
But it's an RSP for my
Let
future.
them know. Yes, okay.
It's like,
fair.
Think of it that way.
Yes.
Then there's the wines that I could drink now if I wanted to, but some I might keep for like 6 years, like this bottle. Mm-hmm. And there's other ones that just, they go in, they go out, they go in, they go out.
Right.
That's more of the sparkling showcase. That's why I kind of keep it separate. So sparkling, it can be made in multiple different ways. You have basically Charmat method, which is Prosecco method. You have traditional method and Charmat. Yeah, Charmat is the same style as Prosecco, where it's made in like a giant tank. It's called tank method. And then you have fermented in bottle, which is traditional method, or in other parts of France, it's Crémant, outside of Champagne. So basically, and then there's like the cheap stuff, which is basically made like pop.
Okay.
So, which is carbonated.
Got it.
But
we don't touch that.
We don't touch that. So this is how it's made. All sparkling goes through 2 fermentations. You have the base fermentation to create your base wine, what's normally called a cuvée or just a base wine. And then you have your second fermentation to add the bubbles.
Okay.
So like if you get your hair done and you dye it, you have the dyeing process and then the toner process.
Got it.
But you can't do the toner without the dye.
I like that.
There you go.
I like that. That's a good
The metaphors
one.
are very
helpful. And the wine
helpful.
is kicking in.
See,
this is getting good now.
There you go. So with Prosecco or tank method things, basically you make a base wine, it ferments. Then you add what's called the liqueur de tirage, which is basically just like more yeast and more additional grape juice, which would kick off a fermentation again. But that all happens in a tank. So in the big tank, you have your cuvee, it ferments, it's good to go. They taste it, they're happy. They put in the liqueur de tirage, and then it goes through fermentation again, but it's in a big pressurized tank. So it tends to create bubbles, but the bubbles are a lot not as intense as they would be for traditional method sparklings. That's the difference between Prosecco and champagne.
Okay.
So for champagne, it's the same concept. You in a large vat, you would make your base cuvee, and then from your base cuvee, you would bottle that with a liqueur de tirage, and then it would go through secondary fermentation in bottles, which makes them yeastier, like breadier, and more intense bubbles because it's in a smaller area.
They are more intense bubbles.
Exactly.
I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
Just popping bottles, drinking them,
and drinking them.
You know, like whatever.
It's also why traditional method, Cremant or champagne, is more expensive.
Okay, got it. I was in Argentina. My husband and I guess we tend to go to, not on purpose wine regions, but we were in Mendoza. Have you ever been there? We went to
I was just there.
Oh, it's fantastic. And we went to Chandon, which is, or we had Chandon, I guess. We went to that little sparkling wine. Now, champagne is just because it's the region, correct?
Yeah,
it has to be made in that region. That's the difference because it's owned, I think.
It's owned by the same
exactly,
people that are
but it
there.
has to be called something different.
So it's owned by Moet and Chandon.
Yes.
But Chandon is their offshoot. They also have one in California as well. So you know how people say like all tequilas are mezcal, but not all mezcal is tequila. So all champagne is sparkling wine, but not all sparkling wine is champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing.
Same idea.
So it's the place that makes it what it is.
So it just has to be from that region.
Has to be from that region, within the bounds of the region. And with champagne, it's also aged for 36 months on lees, which is, so sugar plus yeast equals alcohol. When the alcohol gets too high, that yeast dies off and instantly starts to be called lees instead. Lees aging tends to add nuttiness to wines and bready notes. And those bready notes in a sparkling wine create those brioche flavors. And it's usually at minimum 36 months on lees, which 12 divided by 36 is 3 years on lees.
Okay, 3 years. Okay, this is good. One more question.
That's okay.
Pairing. Talk to me about pairing. Like, I mean, obviously we generally know, I think most people generally know, like red meat, red wine, fish, white wine. But then there's things in between. I saw you did some lamb with a white wine on City TV.
City Line. Yeah. So,
and then I was all thrown out. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
So I don't like to do these. There are very traditional pairings that work out. We call them classic pairings in the wine world. So you have like sauterne and foie gras, which is like sweet with fatty, and sweet with sweet go really great. Fat is sweetness. It's like pork belly is fatty, but it is sweet. It registers on your palate as sweet. So you can have something sweet with it and it will match.
Okay.
Which is fine. You know, and acidity goes with acidity. So like Sauvignon Blanc and like a very bright goat cheese salad, perfect. You're doing a great job. So there's things that match in these congruent, in these, oh my God, what's the other one? Congruent pairings, where they kind of go together. And then there's convex pairings where they don't match very well. But I don't like to focus on that. I like to focus more so on why pairings work, which make things a lot easier to understand. So acidity loves company. Acidity goes with acidity. It's always happy to be with acidity.
Yeah.
So if you have something that's high acid, you can drink something that's high acid and be fine.
It's so interesting. You would almost think the opposite. Like you would need something different on the
I know. You could use acidity to help you in other aspects. So that's the thing. So acidity loves acidity. Bitter notes in wine don't need bitter notes in food because it amplifies it. So if you're having like a Barolo, which is a high tannic wine, and you're having it with rapini, it's going to make everything bitter because tannins come off as bitter on the palate.
Okay.
Fatty foods make the acidity in wine seem softer, and it makes the wine seem richer. Saltiness needs this nice structure to go with it. Saltiness loves structure, which is why you also have people being like champagne and chips are amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that just sounds amazing.
Because champagne has high structure.
I don't think I've ever done champagne and chips. I do wine and chips often.
There you go. But champagne and chips are real good.
I'm getting fancy with my
There you
glaze.
go. Or like fried chicken and champagne, people love a lot.
Okay.
It's salty and fatty and adds to that richness. And then the other thing is both spicy foods and sweet foods love sweet wines. So you can kind of mix around with that. The ways that things work on the palate are universal because the reason most of the pairing has nothing to do with the aromas. The aromas kind of come in. So like if you have a steak and you're pairing it with an equally earthy smelling wine, then you're just smelling earthy animal notes all the time, which people can like, but most people like a diverse aroma of things. So with lamb, and why that Sauvignon Blanc work with it is because the lamb, as if you've eaten lamb before, you know how earthy it smells. It smells very earthy. And Sauvignon Blanc is the farthest thing from earthy that you could smell. It basically smells like cut grass with a whole bunch of lemons and limes and spring on it. So it kind of is a different aroma. So you have like aroma notes that are more symphonic like that. So when you get to the palate, lamb does not have a lot of fat. So we don't need a high level of structure to cut through fat. Structure to cut through fat would basically be tannins because tannins strip fats from proteins and we are the proteins in that scenario. So high fat foods need something with high tannins or high structure. So then you don't need that in lamb because it doesn't have high fat. So you don't have to worry about anything having to be like too highly structured. Acidity would then step in for that because you really want to kind of break down the softness that it can have on the palate. If lamb is cooked right, most people will be like, oh wow, it's like very melty and easy. But you want to prepare your palate for the next bite, which means you would want freshness. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Freshness is acidity.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
It is very scratching the surface.
Like this is just, course 101 of it all. I so appreciate it. If you could leave my viewers and listeners with kind of like a parting thought around wine. It doesn't even have to be around wine or spirits or what you do. I feel like I don't know a lot of people. Like you're the first person like I've now met and had like a longer conversation than I'll have this wine. I feel like there's so much to know. So really, the floor is yours.
I think like two things are really important to know. It's really important to be intentional about your drinking so that you can, and anything that you try and put into your body so that you can tell people what you like about something and what you don't like. It is equally important to know what you like and what you don't like. Those are very important on either end. The second thing is if you go to a restaurant, a sommelier is not there to make you overspend. They are there to help you spend.
Oh, that's totally what people think they're there for.
I know, they're not there to help you.
Yeah, like all of a sudden the person comes, they're like, no, don't bring the book.
If you tell your sommelier if you tell them they come with the book is just a list of items. It is.
It's an intense list.
It is an intense list. And if you say to them, hey, I really like bright, crisp white wines, and my max for my budget is going to be $75 for this bottle. What can you find me on your list that fits within this price range? Even if you don't say a price range, a good sommelier will give you a range of prices in their recommendations. They will give you a price range that is low, medium, and high so that they can understand what you want to spend, even if you don't tell them how much it is.
I appreciate that because you're right. It almost feels like they're like the salesperson.
They're not. Okay. They're mainly like the general translator.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, now that I've spoken to you, like I said, you really are an artist. So when these people are coming to your table, I'm sure if you give them I like something very specific.
Yeah, they'll find it.
They'll find it. They will go back into the drawing board and try to figure it out to you.
Especially if you're going to a restaurant with very specific cuisines or specific wines, like Greek wines are a little bit hard for people to understand, mainly because a lot of people don't really understand Greek language. And Greek language words tend to be long. Mm-hmm. So when people see a grape that begins with an X and then learn that it's pronounced Xinomavro, they don't know what it tastes like.
Right.
But if you tell them, hey, this basically tastes like if you blended the intensity of Cabernet Sauvignon with the spice of Grenache and the airiness of Pinot Noir, they'll be like, oh, okay, I get that now. Now I understand like what you're kind of getting at. It's the sommelier's job to basically translate that for you so that you're not lost.
The translator. I love that. Where can people find you? I know obviously you're on City Line, you're on Breakfast Television,
Yes.
CHCH. You're all over. But
I'm around.
Where do people connect with you?
People can connect with me on Wine by Renee on Instagram. I'm always there.
Always there. You're doing a lot of content. It's great
am.
content. I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being with me today. And cheers. This has been a lovely episode.
Cheers.
See you next time, guys.